we're seeing a dramatic shift and partly it's also driven by, Google and some of their changes in policies around emails and so on, where marketing emails, we're seeing a lot more is being used for regular stay in touch newsletters, right? From the marketing team into prospects, into customers, into others. But then the nurturing or reaching for cold outbound, what's interesting is we're seeing that go out of the marketing team over into the inside sales SDR, BDR team to do one-to-one nurturing, if you will.
Hey everyone, that's another episode of the B2B Growth Hacking Playbook, the podcast, which is pretty SEO friendly. We have all the keywords out there just to make sure that everyone can kind of find it. Today with me, I have Mani Iyer, who's a close friend and someone I respect a lot. Hi, Mani, how are you doing?
Great, Mario. Good to be here.
Yeah, well, thanks for finding the time to actually hop on the podcast. I know how busy your schedule is, and there have been several events in the Bay Area over the past couple of weeks, I'd say. So we can actually touch on that a little bit more. But for anyone who isn't aware of kind of what you do, so Mani is the founder, CEO of Kwanzoo, of a great tool called SiteStop that we've been using here over the past year, I believe, or so. So this is a pretty innovative product, and I'm going to let you talk more about that. But essentially, kind of over the past several years, when it comes to visitor attribution, when it comes to kind of lead generation, demand generation, whatever you want to call it, especially with content marketing, most people in marketing have been dealing with the fact that they've been trying to increase the conversion rates on downloading freebies, ebooks, white papers, webinar signups, just so they can actually attribute and intercept and find people and figure out who's visiting their website. And when I stumbled upon your tool, it was a pretty serious revelation and kind of a major shift in the way we do business ourselves. Like, we killed most of the gateways, like most stuff is free to download so that, more people can link into that. It kind of changed the names of the game when it comes to the traditional funnel and running traditional ads. So you can probably sum it up better. So first off, let us know what sort of problem are you solving and kind of how did you come up with the idea in the first place?
Yeah, so I think, Mario, it's what we certainly have seen is that over the last couple of years, some of these new ways to understand the audience coming to a website came together where at the person level, meaning down to the individual, right? I mean, what has been the state of the art and, think for the last 10 years has been the ability to understand traffic coming into a B2B company's website at the company level or account level, right? So, if somebody from Cisco is on your site, somebody from HP is on your site, but you couldn't tell, who from HP or who from Cisco, right? Any individual with all the information about the individual, which is what makes it truly actionable for salespeople, SDRs, BDRs, account executives, and so on. And that's been a source of frustration, to be honest, right? I mean, I've talked to endless number of salespeople. They're like, why can't I get that last mile information? So honestly, even for us, we kind of stumbled into this. I mean, our company, Kwanzoo, we've been around, as you'll see, right, for since 2015. And we were one of the early movers in the account-based marketing space or category within B2B marketing. That, of course, a couple of other companies, really got a lot of venture money into their business, and they really have positioned themselves as some of the key players in that space, whether it's demand-based or Sixth Sense. What we realized was that we had built a product solution that was more around account-based advertising. So we certainly were getting some number of customers, but we're seeing a lot of customers, let's say, even running it in campaign mode, but not necessarily. That wasn't turning out to be an ongoing, sticky, ongoing usage kind of product or solution for us. So a couple of years ago, we stumbled into, some amazing data partners. So the data partners, it turns out, they have this massive audience database of B2B buyers and even consumers all across the US. And they have this massive database of first-party cookies. These are cookies on these individuals in their browsers. And these are all people all across the US. So we said, hey, what can we do with this? What can we offer into the market that could be interesting? And we were fortunate that, we had this, one of our key marquee customers, we were just, ready to sign them up in October, November of 2022. And January, we got them going. So we, in fact, have one of the most mature, proven solutions around person-level visitor identity. as it's become increasingly known as a category of products and solutions, right? So again, personal level visitor identity, let's tell you who showed up on your website down to the individual. Typical piece of information people want to know is first name, last name, company, title. They want to know the work email. They want to know the LinkedIn URL. And then many of them want the mobile phone number too, because they want to actually be able to dial and call these folks. And then another interesting piece of information everybody wants is the buyer journey. What pages have they visited? Did they go to the demo page, pricing page, contact us, you name it, right? So it's been that type of information. People have been hungry for this stuff. And so they have these beautiful interfaces in their, Salesforce CRM, but all they get is a bunch of clicks or visits in just a company. Like, what do I do with this? So I think this is really turbocharged, the way demand gen, lead gen works. This has been, in my opinion, this has been one of the most useful innovations of 2024.
I do agree. That's probably the biggest innovation over the past year that I can remember, because it completely changed the name of the game. Well, if we account that AI showed up in 22, 23, then definitely visitor ID is the 2024 type of thing. And kind of one of the things that you kind of mentioned is, and again, I'm going to delineate and just kind of reshuffle that for people who are still probably asking. But essentially, we've been using stuff like Clearbit or Snitcher or some of the other competitive tools for company-based data. But I found that really useless when I see that, let's say, Amazon or Microsoft has visited my website. Amazon employs 1.5 million people. That really tells me nothing, first and foremost. And second, in most cases, it's someone who's working in a warehouse and probably just reading a blog post, or someone browsing on their phone. It doesn't provide a lot of intelligence that I find of value. But when it comes down to finding the actual name, first, last name, email address, LinkedIn profile, and even kind of what's I believe is unique to SiteStop is you're also providing phone numbers. Now, that's building a completely different picture. That also enables people to build lookalike audiences, because you mentioned advertising. And it turns the ABM process into a whole supercharged type of Voltron, or like a Transformers experience. So, and again, very well, and I'm not kind of being fairly open about that. We are also using competitive solutions, but we always use SiteStop alongside, because it provides additional data points. It provides the buyer journey. It provides the ICP filtering, which is also extremely important. And these are some of the value points that I honestly believe every single B2B business on the planet has to have that installed if they're dealing with US traffic. So one of the areas that you didn't touch on is kind of the ICP filtering that I'm going to ask you to double down on. And then kind of how does that integrate into the advertising and the ABM journeys?
Yeah, so I think you made a few important points there. So I think let's set some context here, right? So the person level visitor identity data for any B2B company, first of all, we've seen resolution anywhere from 10 to 30%, right? What that then should tell us is, as a marketer, you still have, 70 to 90% of the traffic coming in that you will only be able to tell at a company level. So which means you still need that. So you need to kind of put the two together. That's number one, right? Number two is, to your point, if you have another personal visitor ID tech, and there's several of them, and we can talk about some of the better known ones or whatever, but we know it's an interesting category. There are multiple companies coming into it. The way we are trying to build out our technology, our solution offering, is we are trying to make sure it's super robust and proven and valuable and useful to fast growing startups at the kind of growth stage startups, all the way to mid-market companies, right? So we see that mid-market customers are much more sensitive to a lot of requirements around the leads, the quality of the leads, the resolution being accurate, right? Accuracy of the leads, on and on.
Yeah.
So some of the things we've done specifically focused on the mid-market, because their traffic volumes are super high, is, for example, we allow them to define specific pages on their site they want to pick up the leads from. Nobody wants to pick up leads necessarily from a careers page, because they're going after prospects. So then the next thing from there is the ability to, and we have actually one of the unique few products we know of that can give them both the B2B profile, but we also can provide consumer profiles. So we actually have few use cases. We don't market it actively. If you go to our website, it's catering to B2B companies, but we have considered purchase B2C use cases. Student enrollment, it could work for automotive, on and on. We're not going out soliciting that business, but checkout recovery for e-commerce. We've seen some of those also. We focus on B2B, The next thing from there is, to your point, is in B2B, nobody has time, right? Demand gen people are super strapped for time. Their RevOps people are even more busy. So they're all saying, can you help cut the time down for us? Can we automate this whole process, please? So we've been literally breaking it down step by step by step by step and just figuring out how to automate literally every step of the process. I'll give you examples, right? One is, as you said, they know their ICP, so they have a set of accounts. They know the title keywords and personas of interest. So what we've done is we have the ability to define an ICP. It can be uploaded into the product or it can be synced straight from their CRM, Salesforce CRM. So we've got both models. So HubSpot customers right now at least uploading the ICP list. So for ICP, we realize that they just want to be notified. So we tag it and tell them, okay, this lead is in your ICP, this one is not. Right. The next thing we've got is filtering. So the filtering is where we have the ability to now start separating the leads into ones that fit the ICP criteria again, but with real filters around revenue, company size, industry. And then on the persona side, title keywords, inclusion keywords, exclusion keywords, meaning, hey, give me all the leads except these. Or we also have the notion of sub-exclusions, meaning I want people in operations, but I want marketing operations, sales operations, revenue operations. I do not want business operations. So we've even got those filters in place. And then we've continued to build on that. For example, people want to know, what is the traffic source of the lead? Where did the lead come from? They want to be able to classify the lead into, these are the leads that came from LinkedIn because I'm running LinkedIn paid campaigns. I want to see if I can turbocharge my ROI from LinkedIn campaigns. I want to see if I can generate many more leads from my pay-per-click Google as well, right? So anyway, my point is, suddenly we're seeing this multiplier where you can literally 10x your lead volume, right? 8 to 10x your lead volume for the same cost per click that you're paying for Google, pay the same cost per lead, which, as you know, is pretty expensive on LinkedIn with, a couple $100 or even more for a LinkedIn lead. And then the other thing we've seen is other little things we've started to figure out is, let's say you want to use our product with that other visitor identity product, to your point, is happening more and more. So we have now built what we call a webhook in our product. So you can actually have leads from the other product that's surfacing on the other product flow into us. What does that do? We put that on a block list. And then the cost is very minimal then for the customer. And so your cost, your real lead cost is only when you actually can use the lead. Otherwise, it's a very nominal processing cost, Mario.
Well, that's pretty cool. And again, I'm always open about that because at the end of the day, we're trying to help B2B executives. And what we found out by using, the other competitors in the market is we rarely see any overlap of that happening. So essentially using two products at once, we are just expanding the data pool and there's very little overlap at the time. Now, I believe as, everyone's evolving, there's going to be more overlap and stuff, and then it's going to be feature parity. And then if you need a phone number, you go with you. If you need something else, it's going to be some differentiation. But right now, it's completely acceptable, and that's what we advise everyone, right? I mean, I just tell all of our leads and kind of my email list and stuff, like use, 2, 3 at the same time. Just expand, increase your database volume. It's going to be so impactful and so valuable. It's just worth it, right? And I think there's a lot of value in that. And honestly, I normally do kind of go a rundown of the dashboard, but there's a lot of personal data. Again, I'm just firing up here and see work emails, LinkedIn URLs, phone numbers, and I don't want people to go chase me then on YouTube because I'm kind of sharing what and how they've browsed. But yeah, this is again one of the more revolutionizing things for B2B and demand gen and kind of the marketing departments as well. And one other thing that I'm going to kind of call out, and then I'm going to jump into your kind of bio and background as well, is personally, again, I'm running different businesses. I'm also investing in all that. But I hate selling, as in, car salesman, just outbound, chasing people, calling numbers that probably have no interest whatsoever. So over the past nearly 20 years, everything that I've done is I'm trying to educate and help, speak at events, right? I've written hundreds and hundreds of blog posts. I became a core top writer in 2018 or so. Like, I've been trying to educate and help people and then, just deal with inbound inquiries, right? However, whenever the pipeline is low or whenever, someone needs 25 different touch points, it's a lot more helpful when you see that people are interested in potentially visiting a second time, a third time. You see exactly what they're reading. So what I'm doing here is essentially I see what they're browsing and say, hey, I've noticed that you browse this or read that. I'm just around if you have any questions, right? Like no strings attached, like no hard sales speech. I know you're interested in this. That's fine. If there's anything I can help with, I'm around, right? So it's kind of a conversation starter in a way. And it's fairly, first off, I want to make sure it's clear that this is completely legal. There are data points that are, you can kind of work with, contract with, whomever you're working with. But it's no different than going to a store in a shopping mall or elsewhere. We have cameras everywhere. You have like all sorts of different ways to identify that someone's been somewhere, right? So whenever you show intent to just go and visit a shopping center, it's no different than actually browsing a website. And that's why I think it's a really powerful replica of what's happening in real time.
So Mario, I'll give you maybe a slightly different point of view on this that I'm certainly seeing from some of the demand gen marketers over here in the US. I run into some of these marketers. They actually are super nervous, actually, about
Oh wow.
letting folks know that they know that somebody browsed their site. So the approach that we've seen with some of these mid-market customers, right, they definitely don't want to bring that up. So they take more of what I call a serendipitous approach to outreach, meaning their sales guys might just share a piece of content or collateral which happens to kind of coincide with the kind of the browsing behavior that they've seen. So it's more of a hi, love to talk to you about our company, our business, by the way, have you heard about this product? So it's more of a soft approach. So I just thought I'll mention that, So that's something we've seen.
That's a good point for sure. And I love you mentioning that. I actually saw that in kind of a LinkedIn thread like a week ago or so, like discussing something around that. And someone said, well, we're adding them to a completely cold sequence, right? So
Right.
completely cold sequence just at the right time. And, that's something they say it's converting better, which is, I can completely understand. But yeah, what's the normal journey like? Let's talk about that. Like, because you mentioned, this is one way to approach that. So how do you, and again, I'm going to fire up Kwanzoo's website. So you're working with some pretty incredible companies. Some of the listed ones is WordPress.com VIP, which again, I'm running a WordPress agency. Obviously, I know them. Infosys, public company, Zoriant, Skyslope, Liquidware, like a lot of great companies out there. So what's a playbook that's working right now, kind of related to what you just mentioned here, Andrew?
Yeah, I think you touched upon some of them. I mean, these are mid-market companies that are, larger enterprises. So they are hypersensitive to things such as data compliance, privacy, having proper disclosures on their site. So for example, we're doing quite a bit of work with each of these customers to understand how to use this data in a way that is, compliant in every which way in terms of the engagement and the outreach that they do. For example, all of them, of course, have their own opt-out list that they maintain, right, on in their HubSpot or their Pardot or what have you. And so when we surface and reveal these leads to their marketing team, we tell them, I mean, let's make sure you have blocked and removed all the opt-outs before, because this is your opt-out list on your website, reaching out to your customers. So make sure that only the residual ones are flowing through marketing automation to their SDR, BDR sales team. So that's super critical. As I said, as we continue to add, by the way, we have 15 plus data partners behind the scenes. And so, obviously, when we go to the agreement process, contracting process, they want to know the sub-processors, who do we have, et cetera, because, these people want to vet, right, pretty much everybody that you've got in your waterfall. And by the way, that's one thing we didn't talk about, which is we are really focusing on providing leads that are highly curated, as accurate as possible. There are companies out there, as you know, they're trying to, I call it, they're going to the bottom of the barrel, meaning they're just trying to throw a lot of lead credits at customers to say, now you figure it out. You kind of weed through all of this junk and figure out what makes sense. We've taken the counter approach. We said, set up all the configuration in our product, and what comes out is going to be leads that are high quality, actionable, curated, and you can literally put it to use, ready to use. Different philosophy, if you will, right? So we believe that will differentiate us on an ongoing basis, because I come back to the point about RevOps, and they don't have the time, and right, the salespeople again have very limited time. Now you asked a question about how are they actually using it. So then, yes, the SDR BDR team In some cases, has actually got some parallel dialer and caller sequences that they've got set up. Some of them, of course, are doing literally one-to-one sales outreach through. And by the way, this is an example would be an enterprise customer selling into $1 billion+ kind of target accounts, and these are large deals. Of course, then they do a lot more. They look at all the insights about what pages did they visit, what are they browsing on, what solution might they be interested in, and so it's a large IT services firm. So they have a different approach, different playbook than another company that has literally hundreds of leads a month, right? And the scale is much bigger.
Yeah.
So there, it's more of an email-based outreach to be supplemented with dialing and calling after they see some engagement. So I hope that makes sense. Now, what we're seeing is if you go further down into, and by the way, as you know, we introduced an SMB product for the SMB startup space, much lower price point. So the mid-market customers are paying us 18 to 30K ACV, but the lower down, we have the 100, 200, 500 a month, 250 a month kind of price points. Those folks we are seeing are actually funneling the leads that get generated after all this filtering over to tools like Clay, right? And so in Clay, they have one-to-one enrichment, call it enrichment done in any way, shape, or form that they want. Then they end up having personalized emails based on the LinkedIn URL of the individual. And then the personalized emails, and they end up funneling over to like an Instantly or some of these other tools that can then do secondary domain-based emailing, right? So the primary domain is something used for company internal communications, one-to-one sales emailing by the salespeople. The secondary domains end up being used for this purpose, which is so you don't risk the primary domain. So that, I hope, gives you the full picture on what we're seeing all the way from large enterprise, which is very personalized one-to-one, to mid-market at some scale, which is emailing, but then through their internal tools. Typically, it ends up being an outreach or a sales loft or what have you. And then if you go down to the younger companies, they don't have the outreach and sales loft, but they're starting to experiment with some of the newer tools. But yeah.
Love the breakdown, and I'm going to touch on your bio. I love interviewing multidisciplinary people who are well versed in kind of all areas of business, and in that case, in technology and marketing. Just going through your LinkedIn, software engineer at Microsoft, 1987. It's almost 40 years ago. Tech architect, technical lead at HP, senior product manager afterwards, CEO at Teamscape, which got acquired by PeopleSoft. PeopleSoft itself, and then kind of moving through different ladders up until, Kwanzoo, and kind of your journey that's been going on for many, many years now. So kind of, I believe one of the important aspects here, and it's kind of, because you're talking to B2B executives, I want to touch on other areas of leadership and management, is the importance of being cross-disciplinary and kind of working closely with the rest of the C-suite or the rest of the VP suite or wherever you're kind of, whichever position you're in. It's so helpful to understand kind of the different segments of the funnel, because the buyer journey is pretty complicated. It's going through different stages, right? You have website, you have the marketing funnel and ads, you have the visitor identification, you have probably, connecting that to a ringer or to Clay. And then you have additional outreach or additional campaigns going on the side, and you have remarketing. There are kind of so many different aspects, customers coming in, you have the CX team kind of interfering in that way. So it's how many people are normally involved in kind of a mid-market transaction when it comes to working with SiteStop? Like how many different leadership roles you touch on that are kind of engaged in a conversation like that?
Oh wow, that's a great question. Yeah, so any product solution, right? Let me kind of set the context here. We've had a bit of a journey, but as I said, in the last 18 months or so, we've really focused and honed in on this person level visitor ID tech for the mid-market as being our primary focus, right? And then we've had a broader ABMs type of platform. Then, as I said, we kind of repositioned it into being this, call it a growth platform with person level visitor ID as the lead in for us going into accounts. One thing we realized that we are a great solution in the mid-market for customers who already have an ABM platform. So that's quite a bit of the customers, by the way. They may have a demand base, they may have a 6 Sense. But so this ends up being a nice add-on, that they all are interested in. So in fact, our GTM motion at Kwanzoo is actually hopefully reaching and engaging and servicing many of those customers who already have another ABM product, right? So that they use us with that. Now, who all are involved in the buying process, buying decision? We've seen it work a couple of ways. In some cases, the conversation starts at the VP of marketing / CMO level, because if it's $100 to $500 million business, we start there, and then they end up bringing us in for a conversation. They refer us to their head of growth, head of demand gen. The other more typical ways, of course, the head of growth marketing, head of demand gen is a person who really buys into it and initiates it. The head of RevOps also has a critical role because he or she needs to call it, bless, right? And make
Yeah.
say that, hey, we're going to be a good citizen. We're going to fit into their tech stack. We're not going to mess anything up, And then, of course, their legal does get involved. So we have to go through the a legal process. They want to go through all the compliance stuff, look at the DPA, look at their contract, on and on. So it's more work, to be honest. But then the good news for us, we believe, is that once you're in, you get an opportunity to prove yourself out, and then more often than not, it becomes an ongoing partnership and engagement with them. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It definitely does. You mentioned legal as well. There's a lot more scrutiny, and I completely understand that. What we see is definitely a lot more involvement from, again, both from the CEO and the CFO on top, just in terms of compliance, especially when it comes to budget cuts and just B2B going through some turbulent times over the past 18 months. There's kind of more involvement top to bottom in signing up new tools. There's also more, again, supervision in how many seats we have for most of the Salesforce license through HubSpot or so. There's renegotiation. COOs also coming up and kind of working with all departmental leaders on different roles. So it's kind of, again, as a piece of advice or as a summary to more executive leaders who are not necessarily sitting on top, is understanding more what your counterparts do in order to be able to be more helpful and have more context and kind of build some autonomy along the way. That's definitely something I'd kind of recommend. And I know that you are, so first off, I mentioned the events and we were scheduled to go a few days ago, but you're busy traveling a lot. You also have a WhatsApp community, which is called the USA GTM community. So tell me more about your involvement, kind of what you're seeing right now in Q4, well, the beginning of Q4 rather, and what you see from other leaders. What are the conversations that you're having? What are some of the key problems in the MarTech, sales tech community coming up that everyone should pay more attention to in Q4 and in the next year?
Yeah, thanks, Mani, for bringing that up. So you're right. What happened for us was early in the year, as we were mulling over ways to size our product down into, call it the SMB startup segment, we actually did a visit out to India. India has this incredible, vibrant, growing SaaS community, right? And then they do this annual event called SaaS Boomi. So in fact, we went for that back in March, and then we did like a USA GTM workshop series across India, 5 different cities, 200 SaaS founders. And the reason we hit upon this notion of USA GTM, because as you know, the US is the biggest market, right, in the world. And so there's so many wonderful SaaS companies all in different parts of the world. And they're all trying to figure out, how do I enter the US market? How do I penetrate and grow in the US market? And it's a conundrum for them, right? Because nuances of culture and nuances of GTM and what works and what doesn't work and how people want to be approached, which is very different than, maybe in some of the other countries. And so we've said, hey, so this is, call it, we see it as more of a paid forward kind of sharing our learnings and, with the community at large. And so we've seen this community grow. I mean, we started with maybe 100 people. Now we're almost at 190, coming up on 200. The profile of the folks we have in there, we have SaaS founders all in the 0 to 20 million ARR range. We have, I call them revenue leaders, GTM operators, meaning folks who are very seasoned, senior, all VP level and up at different companies up and down Silicon Valley, the Bay Area, and including some amazing folks even from, say, Austin, UK, and so on. Each of them has experience, expertise in different areas. A couple of folks really strong in messaging and positioning, people strong on the content marketing side. Many people with tremendous strengths around demand gen, lead gen, et cetera, who've taken companies to amazing scale. So it's very valuable insight for these founders to be able to engaging with them. And we even have some few venture folks in there too. So the community is really designed for these founders. We end up having conversations, as you said, literally every week we do like a quick AMA session, member introduction. People get to talk to each other. It's a more intimate setting, invite only. And, pretty much everybody in the community is someone I have met with, I've spoken with. So that's been my approach to, getting people in there and then hoping, they get a lot of value out of it. Now, we've also set up for regional groups. So we have people, we're encouraging people to meet locally in whatever the cities are. But I hope that kind of gives you some clarity around the USA GTM community and what we're trying to do there.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of mention it because I think it's one of the best communities for global founders, especially, and, both for Indian founders, obviously, and SaaS leaders and investors, but also for other global founders that are trying to do go-to-market in the States. I found it pretty helpful. Again, I also want to kind of double down for everyone who's, outside of the States and also for people in the States. Let's just take a look at some of the largest tech companies at the time, right? Microsoft is led by an Indian board leader. Same goes for Google. Same goes for like so many other companies in high tech are actually born from the great, technological advancements of India, and the great both tech and product management expertise has been born in the area. And a lot of rising stars, including a lot of unicorns, are also born there. I think that one of the latest studies that I read about Y Combinator, top unicorn or decacorn startups is, the largest percentage were Indian-born businesses and kind of Indian founders. So it's a pretty inclusive community with lots of great, what's the best way to put it? Lots of great opportunities to meet people that wouldn't normally fit the traditional, hey, you go to, SaaStr, or you go just to, the Bay Area and meet the traditional people going there. There are other impactful, great communities for booming businesses that are going to be huge, and ex-founders who, completed incredible exits, which also kind of makes that WhatsApp community pretty unique, I believe.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. In fact, we try to keep it very inclusive, very diverse, and anybody can ask any questions. It's like I call it a safe space, right? Founders, they don't necessarily feel comfortable, right, talking about all their GTM problems, challenges. So we in fact run our calls in a way that there's no recording, on our weekly AMAs and so on, and people can open up, right, and to fellow founders. So that's been the other vision behind that community. I know the other question you had was around what are we seeing in terms of trends, in terms of, the go forward stuff. So let me maybe touch upon that real quick, Mario. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was, and to kind of double down on that, like what are the conversations hovering around? Because again, the past 12 months, even 18 months have been pretty turbulent. Lots of scarcity, marketing budgets are down, some layoffs, recession stuff. However, the Fed has just cut down with like 50, basis points. The inflation rates, we're expecting another 0.5 or so coming up soon. But what are the levels of confidence or trust or belief or so for next year by revenue leaders? And then kind of what's coming up like technologically or in terms of innovation that you're seeing in the coming year?
Yeah, no, so great question, right? So let me talk about what I'm seeing this year, some big things that are different versus in the past, right? In terms of seeing LinkedIn becoming a actually very, very critical channel for founder-led, right, content marketing, right? The SaaS founders of today, they really don't have a choice. In fact, even the leadership at large, right, across these SaaS companies, for them to get their message out, get their brand word out, the traditional PR, media, etc. It's hard for a SaaS founder to break through when you have literally thousands and thousands of SaaS companies. So having a systematic, rigorous approach to building the relationship network, if you will, right, for founders is super critical. Having a consistent mechanism for getting the word out, getting the message out. Short form video, and some of the guys listening may have seen some of mine on
I
a
love
whim,
them,
on
by
a
the way.
lark.
They're pretty solid. Yeah, keep them up.
Yeah, appreciate that. So literally on a lark, I put out one SaaS Boomi, one of those. We said, hey, let's try this. We've never done it before, and it's now become almost like a weekly routine for me. I try to put one out a week. I don't want to overwhelm people, but at least get one out a week. And the funny thing is, had these big long posts which I thought were, had some good information in there, but nobody cared, right? I got a couple of hundred views. And then who knew, right? The 2-minute video with one little nugget, and that's it. People don't have much time, and they seem to like it. So I walk around at conference events. They say, "Hey, Mani, we see you all the time." I'm like, "Really?" So
Love it.
it's pretty hilarious. Now, the next thing that is we've seen as a tactic, strategy, whatever, is of course LinkedIn being one way to reach and engage folks. If you wanted to outbound emailing, as I said, the trend has been the very targeted list, very, very pertinent, as many buying signals as possible being, sourced before you even send out an email. Example again, finding keywords. Say we're going to a conference or an event, like when we went to SaaStr. Had a couple of guys on my team help me figure out, okay, who's going to be there. We had specific outreach just to the people who are going to be there, who fit our ICP, who fit our personas. We say, hey, would you have 15 minutes to meet? Have a custom calendar for just that event. So in fact, that's become more and more of our practice. So I would say live events are back. They're back roaring back, fortunately, right? After the whole COVID
Yeah.
thing and whatever happened. So I would say for young companies, I would highly recommend that they do content marketing steadily on LinkedIn. They do, live events based engagement. There's no shortcut. The third, of course, is referrals and introductions with your advisory network. And on that front, Mario, I was going to mention to you, we are just starting to experiment with a very interesting tool that allows a closed group of founders and advisors and advisory network that trust each other to maintain their own LinkedIn's in a secure way because it's their personal LinkedIn list, but then have a way to help each other with introductions. So, meaning each person has their own ICP, each person has their own personas of interest, and they have their own reason to reach out. And now it's a trusted, smaller network that they can call it, have an intros quickly figured out versus the more of the blind way they'll have to reach out, right? If it's LinkedIn connections on the larger LinkedIn network, you don't know, right? I mean, the propensity to help each other is larger, right? When it's a smaller group, I call it
Yeah.
the inner circle of
The inner
trust,
circle, yeah.
right? Inner circle of trust between a founder and few of their key advisors. And so even in the USA GTM community, we are going to experiment with that for a few key folks first, see how it works, and then see where we go from there. So these are some of the tactics, strategy, if you will, that we're seeing working for younger companies. As you go to larger companies, one key observation I have is marketing automation. If you think about it, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, what was a heavily used piece of tech. We're doing a lot of emailing from the marketing side, right, to a large bunch of, call it cold prospects. We're seeing a dramatic shift, and partly it's also driven by Google and some of their changes in policies around emails and so on, where marketing emails we're seeing a lot more is being used for regular stay in touch newsletters, right, from the marketing team into prospects, into customers, into others. But then the nurturing or reaching for cold outbound. What's interesting is we're seeing that go out of the marketing team over into the inside sales SDR BDR team to do one-to-one nurturing, if you will. So that's another shift that I thought I'll mention, that it's been a very interesting trend that we've been seeing. So that obviously begs the question: what is the new role for marketing automation, right? If emailing is not the core part of it, what role or function does it really serve, right? In they call it the rewired, rebuilt GTM tech stack, GTM motion. And then you, of course, have a couple of the newer tools that are starting to pop up. I mean, a lot of people are starting to experiment, at least in the SMB space. I haven't seen so much in the mid-market with tools like Clay. Clay is this massive spreadsheet where you can get all kinds of interesting formulas and things and that going. And then you can customize messages. You can set up a bunch of messages teed up, ready to go. And then, of course, another big problem has always been a problem the last 2-3 years, several years, in fact, is what I call the bringing together or aggregation of buying signals, unifying buying signals so that you can rank order companies to go after for the sales organization has been a huge challenge. Most of them, honestly, wouldn't even know how to go about it, right? RevOps people were doing all this in-house wiring, if you will, in their CRM, and then they would do it in their own custom way. No two processes were similar across two different companies. It's like what I call that. It's just crazy, right? And so you do have some newer products that have come along. Common Room is one of them that's trying to tackle that, solve that problem. So I think another interesting thing to think about if we just look at the next 12, 18 months is how will the GTM tech stack change or evolve, right, in the coming weeks, coming months? And that's something, we should probably have another conversation about, maybe a year from now.
Yeah, things are changing so fast. I actually just posted that on LinkedIn today or so, that 80% of the business tips you're receiving today are going to be irrelevant in a couple of years. Just because if you go back like a decade ago, there were Facebook pages, SEO was huge, like LinkedIn wasn't even a thing. I mean, it was mostly a recruitment CV portfolio kind of directory. So things are definitely changing way too fast to kind of predict, but I think I would say mostly safe for the most part for Q4, but then definitely curious what's going to happen in 2025.
And And one more thing, Maria, I just was going to mention, how can we have this conversation go by and finish up without the word AI in it?
The magic word.
The magic word. So I figured, let me talk about, again, people are being very careful. They're being very focused on just experimenting with it in just a few areas that they're comfortable, right? So One area we are seeing certainly is personalization of individual emails using AI, ChatGPT prompts, and so on, and feeding it to their sales tools, emailing tools. Second, we are seeing is, I thought this should be an interesting use case for folks listening, which is when you have very unique buying signal data, when you have this person level visitor ID data and the buyer behavior data, we're starting to see that being fed into an AI engine to start coming up with what I call an account penetration plan. So in the ABM world, when you have 50, 100, 200 top accounts, or when you have RFPs and RFIs coming in, right, to the field sales organization, the account executives, they're having richer, deeper insight and data, signal data, makes for a very interesting customized account, right, penetration plan. Here are the case studies you should use that we have because this company is interested in topics XYZ, products ABZ, solutions 1, 2, 3, right? So we're starting to see some of those. In fact, we're working with one of our key accounts on just solving that problem because we have the data, we have the signals. So we're feeding all these signals into other SaaS applications, which are AI, call it AI powered, AI, more AI first or AI centric. Because we ourselves don't necessarily want to be the guys trying to turn our entire product AI, which doesn't even make sense, right? Because we have this unique data set is the core asset. So now we're all about how can you enable or empower lots of different SaaS applications that are trying to go and become AI enabled. And then here's another suite of applications, which are what I call AI first applications. So AI enabled, AI first, and feeding high quality curated data streams into those systems and tools, we see as a significant opportunity. And that also opens up tremendous opportunities for all the folks in digital marketing services, on and on. So in fact, one of our key enterprise customers, in fact, they have their own marketing services team, right? That serve their clients. So they're also interested in, now they're just seeing all the internal use cases all working, really well for them. They're like, hey, can we take some of this out there to customers? So anyway, I thought I'll mention that AI is opening up all new, a whole suite of new opportunities for this kind of tech and data.
And the kind of go-to-market strategy revamping of kind of buying signals. Like I can completely imagine like 10 different companies having different types of leads in different organization sizes, different roles, different buying signals, and then feeding it to a GPT and just yielding completely different response, such as, hey, we see that white papers for CFOs of 20 to 50 to 200 person companies in the West Coast are what's buying or feeding most, or we see that video gen, like short form, is generating lots of signals, so you need to keep pumping that top of the funnel and then user marketing. And so I can, my mind is going wild now that you mentioned that. But yeah, it would be very interesting to see a new generation of AI driven SaaS tools that specialize in that, and you can kind of pipe SiteStop's data into them, and they can just kind of keep even generating your content plan as it goes along, more or less.
Yeah, and one more thing, as we hopefully, we're probably going to begin the wrap up here. I thought I'll mention is I see even conferences and events and content right out there. It's going to change a hell of a lot, right? Just looking at the next 12 months, because increasingly it's going to be the intersection of AI with marketing and AI with sales, AI with GTM. What does that mean? What does that mean in terms of how people can follow along and keep up with what's going to happen with the current tech stack? What's going to happen with the current quality leaders, if you will, in different categories and segments? Are they going to get disrupted? So that's the other thing that we all need to keep an eye on.
That's definitely coming next year. And again, we can have a whole other episode on AI and the intersection of RevOps, sales, marketing, and tech. But yeah, we can plan one ahead as well, or kind of a webinar for the community or so. So that's kind of another idea. Well, really, really appreciate you coming on the podcast. What's the best way for people to connect with you? You mentioned LinkedIn, but connect with you, learn more about SiteStop. Where would you send them?
Absolutely. LinkedIn is a great way. Can get the conversation started. Of course, they can, visit our website, Kwanzoo.com. And then, we even have a 14-day POC they can kick off, up to 500 warm leads, but at literally zero cost for them to try it out. And yeah, happy to help. And one, of course, is we also have other modules and offerings that, for folks who are further down, right? We usually, start with the conversation with this, get people going with this, and then they have other products for them to explore.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks again for hopping on the show. Everyone, if you like the episode in Mani, please hit like, subscribe, and comment for any question that you may have. I'm going to make sure I'm going to pass along to Mani so that we can kind of extend the conversation and come up with any additional topics. And if you have any other ideas for folks that would be great guests on the show, again, drop a comment here and we are going to ask them out. So thanks again and see you in the next episode.